Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, Akibatun lil Mustaqim. Innahu Rabbi yuhibbu mu'min ladhi yusalli wa ibadatuhu wa salawatuhu nafidun wa Muhammadan huwa Sayyidina Makbubana innahu kana Rasulun Nabiyyan. Salawatu Allah Ta'ala wa salamuhu alayhi. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Lil ikhwani wa akhwati fi din. Wa salamu ala mani taba huda. Lil ikhwani wa akhwati fi Africa, Europa, Asia, wa America, West Indies, wa kulli makan. Halin salam wa bikum. Thank you, my dear brothers and sisters who will show up perhaps here now or in the future for the continued episode now on the Asul fi Aqida, which is a very important aspect in the religion of Islam. And without the sound basis of your Aqida, your Islam is in question. Without being able to define it or to understand it, it's also a dire situation for your Islam. So these classes here on the Aqida and the beginning of the Aqida is designed for those Muslims who are serious about their religion, and also for the non-Muslims who want an understanding on what we believe, and not what they hear on TV or what they see from hypocrites, but they want to know exactly what the scholars have to say about this issue. So the Asul fi Aqida is designed for that. It's for the serious Muslim who's trying to uplift himself and to move closer and closer to knowledge and also closer to Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. And so this is what this is for. A lot of the Muslims may not like this type of course because they're satisfied by just saying that they're Muslim and they go about their daily business without actually knowing who and what they are. They just say they're Muslim. But again, when a non-Muslim come to them and ask them questions, many of them cannot answer the questions at all. So with that said, our brothers and sisters, today, Islam is under not a threat, because nothing's going to remove it, because we got that promise from Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. We got that assurance from our Prophet alayhi salatu salam. But there's a lot of enemies outside of it and a lot of enemies inside of it. So this part of the Aqida dealing with reasoning, logic and reasoning. And it's a funny topic when you think about logic and reasoning, because you think about the great theologians and so forth and so on and their philosophies. But all of them had something missing in their lives. And this is why they were always off skew, because they had something missing. This is why we have this particular title, because we want to make sure that the Muslim understands what happened to these people who were supposed to be philosophers and so forth, that we know out of Europe and so forth, and modern day philosophers as well. And matter of fact, before we started, I saw something that was very disturbing the other day on YouTube. I saw this sister, Muslim sister. She's I guess, health practitioner. I'm not sure, dealing with psychology. I can't recall. Anyway, her program came on, and I just happened to pull it up in Facebook. And here she was promoting the philosophy of Zen. And she's a Muslimah. This is what I'm talking about. And anyone understands, Zen comes out of China. It's a philosophical, religious, metaphysic belief. She was promoting this on the station. when I saw it, I was so dismayed. I wish I could take her off of it, but I could not. So I wrote in the chat and asked her what Akida was she following. And she didn't respond to it. I saw her face when she read it, but she ignored it. And her guest did too. And this is not the first time I saw this lady bring something that was actually it's breaching disbelief. When you introduce something that Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has not ordained, and then you try to push it and to promote it among non-Muslims and Muslims alike, is you have to ask the dear sister, who is she? Assalamu alaikum, my dear sister Amina. You have to ask, what's the question? What's up with her? What does she actually believe in? But so anyway, we'll start here. There's the logical and reasoning. You say, yeah, well, this is a kind of a, subject there's a lot of things that's logic. Yes, we know that. But I'll get into this probably in 2 sessions. And we start off with what do we know about logic and reasoning as far as the Muslims? The Muslims don't look at it from a metaphysic standpoint, meaning where they gaze up into the sky and look at the stars and go by the alignment of the stars. Nor do they work with the jinn or with the shayatin in order to get certain types of advantages over other human beings. We don't do that either. Here we go logical and reasoning, just like the title said. So what are we talking about? First off, we have to ask the question is, who possesses the right to legislate? Interesting, to legislate. Many say, well, why is that important? You think about that. You black man in America and in some other parts of the world, in Canada, in Europe, legislation is important to you, isn't it? Because of the draconian laws that have been passed and because of the way they act, this hits hard at you, Muslim and non-Muslim alike, who are black men and women. Africans born outside the United States, Africa. It hits you because the logic that is used isn't logic and reasoning. So who has the right to legislate? That right goes to Subhanahu wa Ta'ala only. It's only him who has the right to legislate. And Subhanahu wa Ta'ala put forth many legislators. Now, what do you mean by legislators? You talking about the Congress of the United States or the Parliament there in Britain or some of the other the Canadian governments or the Chinese government, Japanese governments? No, these legislators are those who follow Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. And so here, the legislation goes to Subhanahu wa Ta'ala only. Here's other parts of this. Then you have the prophets. The prophets receive the revelation. And then they in turn teach. From that, we have scholars and other intellectuals in Islam who take what has been taught to them by the prophets. And then they in turn begin to teach the people. This is where it's supposed to go. And that law that they preach is that according to what Subhanahu wa Ta'ala's law, the Torah, okay, the Injil and the Sharia. And we know what has happened to the Torah and the Injil. And we see what has happened now to the Sharia, Islamia, the Islamic law. And we know what has happened there. So you say, well, okay, Yahya, I see what you're saying here, but in America, this is what they do. This is their constitution. In Europe, this is the constitution, and so forth and so on. Let me give you something because we can really talk about some logic today. Now, the Sharia is such that there's no contradiction because, and I'll get into this further, but I want to give you points for you to think about. When the legislation in America is handed down, it's not handed down because they follow Prophet Moses or Abraham or Isa alayhi salatu salam. No, they only go by what they feel. Secondly, their legislation says is designed to protect the land. But the legislation that you see around the world today is exact opposite of that. It's designed only to appease and to help certain ones in that land. Meaning, they say they protect the land, and yet and still the United States allows homosexuality, allows rampant fornication, it allows all type of deviant behavior. It allows drinking, smoking, and even in some states now, even hashish, or not hashish, excuse me, that's strong, marijuana could be used. So they say they protect the land, and yet they're corrupting the land at the same time as they said they're protecting it. In the Sharia, we don't have that problem. Because why? Because everything is meshed into one. But with the non-Muslim governments, they're not going by subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're not following any of the prophets. They're not even following any of the books of the prophets. They're following only what they feel in their heart and what they get from others and others who are like them, and also from the devil. That's right. This is why you have draconian laws. This is why you have people who enforce the laws in the United States and other places. They kill and do a lot of things that it's just defy logic. This is why I say logic and reasoning. Their logic and reasoning and their legislation is off skew. It's not right. So here, subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to us and telling us that their legislation belongs to him and only him. Then he passes it down to his messengers. Messengers, as I said, give it to others. Here's the proof of this, and I'll give you one ayat, Surah Yusuf, which is Surah 12. And subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and this is the verse 40. If not him, ye worship nothing but names, which you have named, ye and your fathers, for which Allah hath sent down no authority. The command is for none but Allah. He hath commanded that you worship none but him. That is the right religion, but most men understand not. That's true. You think about this. How many today are legislating per the prophets, what was given to them, and per subhanahu wa ta'ala? Very few. Very few. Some take some of it and others they don't. They add to what they want and so forth and so on. This is why we have worldwide strife, because the logic and reasoning is off skew. It's because since they're not using subhanahu wa ta'ala's laws and they're not following any of the prophets that he has ordained, this is why we have all these problems. You turn on the TV set, it's sickening. You see what is happening. It's worldwide. I mean, persecution, wrongdoing, it's often poverty, starvation. I mean, it's just all over the world. And subhanahu wa ta'ala is not his fault, because subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained. He's allowed this to happen because we're going to get this place cleaned up. Our prophet has told us that it's coming. But right now, we can't remove many of the leaders out because there's the stronger of the governments, the two-bop governments, are allowing these people to stay in power, and they protect them with their militaries and so forth and so on. And this is why we have so many problems. So here, subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you straight out that none has the right to be worshipped but him. That means him and to follow his legislation only. So let's look at this further and by logic. The commander, okay, is allowed to legislate per the Quran and Sunnah or the Torah. If they're Jewish, if they're supposed to be Christian, they're supposed to have the Injil, which they don't know, because the Injil was not given to 99.9% of the Christians. So the only thing they know is what came out of Europe, and that's it. That's why they call it the New Testament. But Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, his Sunnah was put under, hidden from the people. That was by deliberate. So even though we know the people in Habashah actually practiced it, but by the time about 300 AD, the Council of Nicaea began to do their wicked deeds and to change the Christianity and wrest it away from Isa alayhi salatu, Jesus, and wrest away from it. And they even killed in order to protect their new religion that they wanted to promote. So and we see also our brothers, the Jews, are also in violation of this as well. This is why in Surah Ma'idah, subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is Surah 5, he was very harsh, especially the verses 44 to 46 about Christians, Jews, and Hebrews, but and Christians, Jews, and Muslims, about them not following his legislation. And he said that they were disbelievers and they were corrupted souls for not doing this. So subhanahu wa ta'ala is laid down the groundwork for this. Now, third, we have problems in the governments of like America and places like this in the Western world. Because again, as I said to you before, they are not legislating according to God's law, subhanahu wa ta'ala's law. They're not. We know that. We see that. They're making decisions that are outside of that. The logic and reasoning does not make any sense. And this is why you have the problems you have in the United States and elsewhere in the world, and even in the Muslim world now. We have people, you see what is happening to our brothers there in Sudan. They're screaming for this governance. They're screaming for the American type governance in their land. And I have to tell you, my brothers and sisters, those who ask for this type of governance are apostates. They have apostated from their actions and their words, because nobody asked to put on the disbelievers' ways and means on another Muslim or in his land. That's verified by Surah 4, Surah Nisa 4, in the verses 141. Subhanahu wa ta'ala said he will not allow for these disbelievers put their way upon the believers. Their way is what? Democratic ways and means and communist ways and means and Zenism and Taoism and Shintoism. All these other isms that are around the world. He is not allowed. We're not as Muslims supposed to take that. But we have Muslims adopting it. I saw it yesterday with that sister who was promoting Zen philosophy. And here she's in hijab and talking. I was shocked. There was no Bismillah Rahman Rahim. There was nothing about the Quran. All she was talking about is philosophical things that come out from things, again, logic and reasoning that's off skew. Here she's promoting it. This is the problem we have today, my brothers and sisters. This is widespread. Number 4, this is prevalent in the understanding of the Muslims today. They don't understand. Like subhanahu wa ta'ala says here in verse 40 in Surah Yusuf, which is chapter 12. He said, most men understand not. That's true. And we see that. They don't understand. And this is why they govern blindly. And it hurts them and hurts their population. It's really shameful. And we all suffer because of that. Now, the number 5, the Muslim who follows the subhanahu wa ta'ala and his messenger, and they follow the law that was handed down to their prospective prophets. Okay, now you have the Jews, they have the Torah, they have Muhammad, and they also Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. And they're supposed to go by this legislation. As you see, they don't. We can look at Israel today. We see what's happening with them. We don't have to get into that. We know what they're doing. We see what they're doing. And we're not saying all the people of Israel is doing that, because we know it's not the case. Because we know the Orthodox Jews, they are very strict in their observance of the Torah. So we're not talking about them. As a matter of fact, they're in conflict with the government. And it's funny. They are in the same position as the strong Muslims are in Muslim states. The Israeli government is after them a lot. They spy on them a lot. They interdict them a lot. Same with the strong Muslims in Muslim countries. The same kind of attitude, where you're a strong Muslim, you're interdicted. The Jews have the same problem, because they want to push forward the Torah in its original form. The strong Muslims wants the Qur'an and Sunnah in its original form. So they're being fought. Both of them are being fought. So number 6 here is the corrupted understanding about the life in the world. This is true. The corrupted understanding. We know very little about the world. Yes, we know about the oceans, we know about this and that, but there's a lot of things we do not understand, and we are corrupted. All we have to do is look at what's happened to the weather. All we have to look at all the diseases. We have to see all these things that are around us. Again, why? Because the logic and reasoning by those men in power is off skew. They're not working with subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're not working with the revelations that was handed down. They're only going by what they want and what the devil wants. And you see the sorry state that the world is in today. And unfortunately, the Muslims are just as guilty. Why? Because they're following these wretched men who are nothing more than antichrist. Most of them are antichrist. They say they profess Christianity, but they don't. Number 7. Because of this action, the people are corrupted, and their life in the world today is corrupted, and they're in a sorrowful state. Now you say, yeah, that's a big statement. Well, let me show you something here. How many suicides are going on in the United States? How many actors who got billions, they're killing themselves, or they die from overdose? Think about that. How about sexually transmitted diseases? It's grown rampant in America and Canada and Europe as well. You look at major catastrophic diseases. They are ran mostly by who? Western governments. They developed in Western governments. You see my picture, what I'm talking about? Now, I'm not trying to give the Muslim states a free pass, because I'm not. Because they are following the footsteps of these particular governments. Not all the governments, but many of them are. And they walked away from the Sharia. Look what happened in Sudan. The former president of Sudan, I only have to mention his name, who was overthrown. He had some portions, maybe 30-40% of the Sharia he had operated. At one time, it was almost 80%. And he went down, and each time he started going down from it, because he wanted to stay in power, and he became corrupted. But the land still had many strong Muslims. It was so much food, and the bounty was so great, as I explained before on some other shows. In Sudan, they had so much food, they didn't know what to do with it. Wheat, corn, fish, you name it. Now they have very little food. So they install a puppet president in Sudan, and he removed the Sharia. He closed up all the schools, Islamic schools, went after the scholars, because this is what the foreign governments told him to do. The Tubab governments told him to do. He did that. Many of them had to go to Turkey, Qatar, and other places. I heard some of them are even here in Morocco. I don't know if that's true or not. I heard this. And you see what's happening. They're constantly in revolution in Sudan now. You see what I mean? Because their logic and reasoning is off skew. They adopted what the enemy has told them to adopt. Number 7. The corruption is such a wide scale, it's off the charts. My brothers and sisters, I know you may be thinking about this and you may say, so what? But you should think about that, because the world as we understand it is dying right now. It's dying. You think about it, it's dying. The people in it are dying from diseases, from murder, from persecution, from starvation, and a whole other malfeasance in government, and so forth and so on. They're really suffering. So, but we know our Prophet ﷺ has told us there will be relief. If he says something, it's going to happen, because it has happened, because he has given the hadiths, given us the timeline to all the way to the end of the earth. And each one of them have come true. So we know this is going to happen. Now, why subhanahu wa ta'ala's legislation? We know that subhanahu wa ta'ala's legislation is perfect and is designed to what? To protect us in the worldly life, and also to prepare us in the afterlife. This is the difference between the Sharia Islamiyah, the halakha, the Torah, okay, this the law, the Torah, the law of the Torah. The as explained last week when I was talking about things in Hebrew, and those laws are designed to what? Prepare you in the dunya, in the worldly life, and to help you in the afterlife. This is why why it's important that we have subhanahu wa ta'ala's law. Because when we adopt that, the off skew of logic and reasoning is gone. You say, Yahya, what are you talking about? Let me give you an example. Let's look at the Sharia Islamiyah. How easy and simple it is. Meaning, it's the logic and reasoning behind it is very good. It's simple. We tell you, don't steal. We tell you, don't fornicate. You allow sexual relations, yes, with your wife. There's no dating. There's no smoking and drinking. There's stealing. It's off. There's no gigolo of taking people's land without right. The whole host of things. All of this stuff is made easy for you to understand. And so the religion and the governments are one. But in the democratic world, there's a separation. They tell you one thing on the government, but then religion is something else. You have people allowed to worship ants. They can even worship the toilet. They even have devil worshiping. And I talked about this, I think about a year ago. I don't know if they're still doing it. I don't know if they ever caught these people. They have human sacrifice in the United States. I think in Detroit, I can't recall if it was in Michigan somewhere. I can't recall that, where it was brought out. Human sacrifice. Can you believe that? All this is because the legislation is separated. You have the state and then you have religion. This is what they try to promote even here in Morocco and other places. The Tubab come here and try to tell it his governance is the best in the world. It is not. It's the worst in the world, because it has nothing to do with subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when they say they profess Christianity, we ask them, okay, why are you not following the Torah then? Why aren't you not following Moses, alayhi salatu wasalam? Why don't you follow John the Baptist? We know him as Yahya, alayhi salatu wasalam. They don't follow any of that. So their legislation is crooked, it's skewed, and we don't understand it. And you look at that and you ask the black man who's driving down the street and he gets stopped. and he's shot and killed. And most rarely, the policeman will get off. You seen what has happened here with this young thug murderer who got off for killing people there at some demonstration. He just got off here, and there's a big uproar over this. And so this is what I'm talking about, my brothers and sisters. When you look at the American law, it's off-skewed. It's hard to understand. It's a lot of verbiage to it, and it's always being tweaked. And then when you look at the criminal law, it's even far greater. Yes, it tell you don't steal, don't do this. But why do they have different crimes and punishment? If you're white and you're caught with 2 things of marijuana, the judge will look at you most likely and say, hey, since he's white, he's a two-bob and a boy is two-bob. He say, oh, Timmy, we understand he had a hard time. And so we'll let him go home, but, we'll put him on probation and have him go and get cleaned out. But a black kid, they throw him in jail for a year. You see what I mean? This is, again, the logic and reasoning in this type of setting is off. It's wrong. It's because it's devil-filled. Assalamu alaikum, my dear brother King. So, again, my brothers and sisters, the legislation is a serious matter. You ask any black man in America and woman, is legislation important to you? It is very important, because they're even going about now trying to stop them from what? Even voting. Now they even haggling over the abortion laws. The United States is in a sorrowful mess. It's in a sorrowful mess, and it's sinking fast. Its moral compass is way off skew. Its logic and reasoning doesn't even make sense anymore. It's killing its population and killing it in a variety of ways. And the government is designed to propel and promote the two-bob and to keep him in power and his folks in power. And yet his people are dying and they're not having babies. His legislation is designed to protect him, not the black man or the Mexican or any other man who's of color. He's not. It's not that. So therefore, the logic and reasoning is off skew. Okay, number 2 here. There's no logic in the legislation that's without subhanahu wa ta'ala in it. And so therefore, again, as I've been stressing, this is really, really hard. And those who are living inside the United States, especially the black man, when he gets in his car, he's worrying about him being stopped and shot and killed, and his son too. These are the type of things here, again, because the legislation, the logic and reasoning from it is off skewed. It's not right. So the logic behind what's happening with them is again perverse. That's any other way. I have no other word to use. It is perverse. My brothers and sisters, it is perverse. So what do you do about that? There's nothing you can do, because the powers to be want this. And you Muslims, you're not supposed to be voting in the United States anyway. That's forbidden for you to do that. There's many fatwas, and there's a good reason for it, because whoever they put in power doesn't benefit you at all. And especially their laws. Their laws, they're not there to benefit you. They're against you. They have legislation against you as a Muslim in the United States. So you don't support that. Yes, you live there, but you don't support that, and you don't vote. Now, the legislators, remember I told you at the beginning, I was talking about subhanahu wa ta'ala, he has abundance of legislators. The legislators we're talking about, again, we talked about is who? We had our prophets who became learned men. We call scholars, okay? And clergy and so forth and so on in English. They in turn empower rulers and leaders. They in turn give this to the people. This is how it's supposed to go. This is reasoning. This is the logic and reasoning, and it's sound. Let's look at the two-bob world. You see, subhanahu wa ta'ala is here. They do not follow the prophets. None. They are not training learned men to govern. That's two. Number three, they don't have they don't have enough what I would say rahma, mercy in their heart. And so the governments of the Tubab governments are filled with what? Racial and religious discrimination. So they have nothing. There's no buffer between the people and those up in power. So those who are down below here don't know what they're using, and they don't understand what laws they're using. Now, we're not talking about the common law, criminal law, where we understand no one is allowed to steal and rob and so forth and so on. But there's a lot of things they are allowed. I give you an example of that. In the Sharia, we're allowed to marry. Whoever says that we're not allowed to marry is foolish. We encourage marriage because we say that 50% of Islam is marriage. It's how important we deem it. But we have rules and regulations for that. They don't. In the United States, the man can be married. He marries today, but he can go and get 10, 20, 30, 40 mistresses. There's nothing wrong with that. And he can practice this filth in every state. He lives in California. He can this weekend he goes to Nevada to be with a couple of women over there, and the next weekend he goes to Arizona to be with women over there. There's nothing wrong with that, but he cannot have a second wife. That's called bigamy. What's the logic and reasoning behind that, my brothers and sisters? You see the legislation I'm talking about? What's the logic behind that? Here, this man can go and spread diseases because he doesn't know who he's having relations with. He brings it home as well. And this is why diseases like this, the STDs in the United States, is run rapid. And therefore, their laws are off-skewed. You get married, but you can have mistresses. But if you decide you want to go and uplift another woman and marry her so you can give her protection, you can't do it. It's called bigamy. That's why I said, my brothers and sisters, they do not use the laws of the prophets. So their system is away from that. Now, let's look at number 4 here. The Americans and the Europeans and their governments and their presidents and so forth are men primarily who are godless. Okay, they're Zendek. I mean, bottom line, they say they profess Christianity, but that's just a show. And this is a very, very simple fact to look at that. And so now, my brothers and sisters, if you sit back now, you listen to what I've said, and you go back and you think about the logic and reasoning we're talking about here tonight. And you ask yourself a question when you're sitting in LA or Dallas or in Kansas City, Missouri, or Cleveland, Ohio, or Washington, D.C. You ask if what has been governed there, does it make sense? It doesn't. But the Sharia Islamiyah does. The legislation that is handed down by subhanahu wa ta'ala is very clear. When you step out of the house, the policemen have no right to come after you because you are a black man and get you and go after you and shoot and kill you because no one is above the law under the Sharia. How about the Tubab law? They are. The Tubab is oftentimes above the law. They get away with murder. We know that constantly. Under the Sharia, even the Hezbollah police, if they do wrong, they are prosecuted for it because no one is above the law, even the head of state. So when that man walks out of the house in a Muslim state under the Sharia, he knows he can walk down the street. No one's going to rob him. No one's going to go steal from his store. No one is going to stop him and go after him because he's a black man. He's not going to be stopped and shot at and then lied upon. These are the things, again, the logic and reasoning behind the Sharia is great. Can we say that in the United States? When you black man, when you walk out to go out, or you Pakistani man, or you Arab, or you Mexican, when you go out of your house, what happens? You have to think about things. And when you see a policeman pull up behind you, you have to wonder what he's going to do. This is what I'm talking about. Under the Sharia, the Hezbollah police have no right whatsoever to target people because of race or even their religion. Again, you say, yeah, that's not true, because if you're a Christian, they can do this to you. No. Let me explain that to you, our brothers and sisters. This is not the case. Under the Sharia Islamiyah, if we have a emir, a rightful emir, he's under the Sharia. We always, every century, you look at this, we had Jews always live with the Muslims all the time, and they're allowed to practice their faith. That's right. And they're even allowed to even settle their own disputes under the Torah. We allow them. But if there's a dispute and they can't seem to get it rectified, then they come to the Muslim ruler for a decision, and that decision is final. This is how we operate under the Sharia. So this we encourage people, and this is why you notice, you look at all the eras since Islam, the Jews have always come to live among the Muslims. And many people don't understand that. They have always come to live around the Muslims for protection. And this is why you notice in Muslim states you have a sizable Jewish community, because they were allowed to live and flourish. They have their synagogues. This is what I'm talking about, the Sharia Islamiyah, my brothers and sisters. They are allowed to practice. They come out of their house. They don't have to worry about if they're going to be shot. They don't have to worry about if they're going to be profiled. They're not going to worry about me or anybody else coming to their stores to steal, because we steal, we're going to get in trouble for it. We can lose our hand. You know, the laws for under the Sharia is very harsh, very, very harsh. This is why the way of life and the life expectancy is higher under the Sharia, because the laws are so clear and the logic and reasoning behind it is sound. Not so in the democratic ways of meaning. The lifestyle, the lifespan of the black man and other men of color is low than the white. Why is that? You think about that. And this is what I'm talking about, my brothers and sisters. Now, number 6, subhanahu wa ta'ala's legislation is designed to uplift the human being and also to protect, again, his religion, so he can worship him. This is our purpose on this earth, not to serve the Tubab, not to serve his government, not to serve any man for that matter. No, our purpose is to worship him on this earth. This is what we believe as Muslims. And all of the prophets have stressed that. I don't care if you look at what Isa alayhi salatu wasalam has said, what Moses have said, alayhi salatu wasalam, Prophet Solomon, what he had said. All of these you see, all of this is again something that is normal, and the logic and reason behind it is sound. So I ask that question is, so why isn't the Tubab governments following behind Prophet Moses, alayhi salatu wasalam, or Solomon, alayhi salatu wasalam? Who was wiser than Solomon? King Solomon, Suleiman, we know him in subhanahu wa ta'ala calls him Suleiman. Who was more wiser than him? How about Prophet David? We call Dawood. We have all of these examples that the Tubab governments can do, they can emulate, but they don't. So you see what I'm talking about. And it's a problem. And it's killing the earth. And the Muslim states are dying with it because they're following these governments and their legislation. Subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't authorize that. And this is why we have problems. And all we have to look is, and if you look at example of something, you know what's happened, Sodom and Gomorrah. See, Most of the Western countries are almost in that state. You think about that. It's almost in a state. I was looking at a program today. I started looking, it was a police program. I hadn't seen it in many years. I'd never saw it because when I moved, it just came out. I started looking at it. It was a police drama, you know, it's like I think it's about 5, 6 seasons. And every time I turn on the TV and look into United States and I see their movies, vast majority of them have a lot of smut in it and homosexuality themes in it now. I saw that. Again, my brothers and sisters, under the Sharia Islamiyah, under the halakha of the Torah, is forbidden for that. They would be arrested because the corruption in the land, subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want that. He speaks of that in the Torah. He speaks of that in the Quran. He does not allow that. This is why we have Hezbollah police who are designed to enforce the laws, not the crazy genocidal racist police that you see in the United States and Europe and Canada and other places around the world where what they enforce, they enforce some things here and allow other things to go and so forth and so on. See, so this is the difference between us and them. Now, the man who legislates, and he legislates other than what subhanahu wa ta'ala is advised. Subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it clear in Surah Ma'idah, which is number 5, and verses 44 to 47. Subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it very clear. This goes for Christians, Jews, and Muslims. And this is why it's important, my brothers and sisters, that when we look at legislation, you have to think about legislation as far as logic and reasoning. Because if you say, no, it's not pertinent, it isn't pertinent. It is pertinent because we've been shot and killed in America a lot. We've been stopped continuously a lot. This hurts us because the legislation is the logic and reasoning behind the legislation is off skewed. It's wrong. Subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this. And in Surah, in the chapter 5, verse 44. And this, what I was talking about with subhanahu wa ta'ala, listen, I'll read this off to make my point, my brothers and sisters. Again, this is chapter 5 in verses 44. Subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if it was we who revealed the law to Moses, alayhi salatu wasalam, therein was guidance and light. By its standard have been judged the Jews, by the prophets who bowed, as in Islam, to Allah, Allah's will, by the rabbis and the doctors of law. For them was entrusted the protection of subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah's book. They were witness thereto. Therefore fear not men, but fear me, and sell not my signs for a miserable price. If any do fail to judge by the light of what Allah has revealed, they are disbelievers. My brothers and sisters, now we get to the crux of the logic and the reasoning. You pick that verse and do your research on it. And there's a series of verses that there are a trilogy. Subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it clear. Jews, Christians, and Muslims. We have clear books. It's clear. Yes, the Torah and the Injil has been corrupted, but the Quran has not. But it's still, even though it's corrupted, there's still stuff from subhanahu wa ta'ala in it. And so subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that the rabbis were entrusted with protecting that book. They didn't do it. The Torah, I'm talking about the Torah, they did not protect it. They end up making another book called the Talmud. And so, and he says, if you don't do this and you don't legislate as he has revealed, you are a disbeliever. That means, one, if you say you're a Jew, you've apostated. If you say you are a Christian, you have apostated. If you say you are a Muslim, you have apostated. Now, of course, we have rules. That's a class all in itself. It's not all that simple to declare somebody a disbeliever because there's rules about that. But the gist of it is here. Subhanahu wa ta'ala gave his law. This is what we go by. And so we have to be, very careful. I'll read this other one here to you as well, number 45. Again, for those who showed up, this is chapter 5, verse 45. Subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we ordain therein for them life for life, eye for eye, nose for nose, ear for ear, tooth for tooth, and wounds equal for equal. But anyone remits the retaliation by way of charity, if an act of atonement for himself, if any fail to judge by the light what Subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed, they're no better than wrongdoers. Again, my brothers and sisters, Subhanahu wa ta'ala said, we have given you the rabbi, we've given you the ulama fuqaha in Islam, we give you the clergy of the Christians. They have, Subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you laws. He's given you how to govern. He's given you how to protect your people and protect his book. And we failed to do it. And he's told you here that what? We are disbelievers. We are disbelievers and we're wrongdoers. This is something that we have to be very careful of. And unfortunately, my brothers and sisters, this is so widespread today. This is why we have all the problems we have. It's a shame. It's very shameful. Let me see what brothers here have to say. Yes, Brother King's talking here. Knowledge, your knowledge. Yes. Take back your power through your knowledge. Yes, that's right. This goes for people. You should learn your laws and get that knowledge, and it will empower you. He says here, we taught Tubab jurisprudence. True. Napoleon Bonaparte borrowed from the Sharia for France. Yes, we know that many of what he said here is very true. We know that many of the people borrow from Islam and they don't admit that. And many of the scholars today won't admit that they borrow from Islam. But that's okay. We don't need that from them. But we know that they borrow from us a lot, especially like in the United States. One group, a offshoot of Christianity called the Mormons. Their prophet, who they claim is a prophet, which he's not a prophet, but he borrowed heavily from the Muslims. And now even their scholars in modern age admit that a lot of the Mormon ways and means was taken from Islam. That's right, my brothers and sisters. The Mormons, they're in Utah, but they're all over the United States, and they're an offshoot of Christianity. And we can't marry those people either. So don't think about marriage any of their women. You cannot marry them as a Muslim. You cannot. Okay, my brothers and sisters, I'm going to close up here, and I'm going to give you one more thing, something for you to think about. Subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us that when there's legislation, logic and reasoning in the legislation, the religion and the state government is one governing, and is one governance. The religion is protected by the state law. If any person, Jew, Christian, or Muslim, divides that up as we have today, he's a disbeliever. Because Subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't ordain that. The Torah did not ordain that. The Injil did not ordain that. The Quran, the Sharia Islamiyah, the Quranic law did not ordain that. The three sister religions did not ordain that. Legislation was designed to protect both institutions and have it as one. You see the trouble we have today? You have state legislation here, but then you have homosexuality, you have fornication off the charts. Man can have 600 mistresses. Even his wife can even have side pieces on the side as well. There's slinging of dope all over the place. There's even legalized marijuana being smoked. Drinking is off the charts. You can drink to your fill. and this is why the paradox, because they say they're protecting America, but yet the corruption of the land is so great. This is why you have all the crime. This is why you have all the murder. That's why you have all the diseases. And that's why Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has had enough of the killing that's happened in America, and the killing of Muslims they have done. And now Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has paid them back, and he still put them under a dab, under his punishment. So they have, and the Muslims living in it, you must be very careful, because what's happening there now, floods, famine, weird bugs popping up all over the place, diseases running rampant. You're subject to be killed. I mean, as a black man, I mean, the list goes on. You must be very, very careful, my brothers and sisters. And so with that said, again, my brothers and sisters, don't listen to the disbelievers who try to sell you the theory of logic and reasoning by saying, let's separate the government from the state, from religion. It doesn't work, my brothers and sisters. It does not work. You see the failed states that we have around the world today, they have separated. You have the state over here, and then you have the religion over here. And in America in particular, because that's where I live 50 years, the religion is I don't know what they call that, what they're worshiping there in the United States. I don't know what they're worshiping. They say they profess to be Christians, and yet still they left the Torah. I don't understand what they're worshiping, to be honest. But that's a class in itself. And the Muslims are starting to do the same thing. They run away from the Quran now, and they're going by their own what's in their heart, which is wrong. So, my brothers and sisters, today I talked a little bit here, and we will cover, inshallah ta'ala, other segments of this, because it's important that the logic and reasoning and about Subhanahu wa Ta'ala's law, that you as a person, a Muslim person, especially in particular, you must follow the Sharia Islamiyah. In other words, the Quran and the Sunnah. You must follow that, my brothers and sisters. Don't follow the non-Muslims. You see what they have done. They have corrupted their books. Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is giving you guidance from the Quran and the Sunnah. You follow his law. Even if you live in LA, you follow to the best of your ability. And if you do come to power, if you're in legislation, you Muslims, you should not be getting on these city councils and other, especially inside the United States, even in Britain and in the Western world. You should stay off that, because it has nothing to do with Islam. That legislation has nothing to do with it. And again, if you look at it from the standpoint, as I told you, their laws have nothing to do with Moses alayhi salatu wasalam. They have nothing to do with Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, Jesus. And surely they have nothing to do with Muhammad, our prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. They don't. See, so stay away from it, because the logic and reasoning is not according to Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. And remember, Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is the only one has the right to legislate. And he's handed down, he's ordained the prophets. He's then ordained again the scholars. The scholars in turn then give it to the rulers. The rulers and then enforce it. That's their job, to enforce Subhanahu wa Ta'ala's law. Not to make up their own laws, not to tweak it here and there so they can stay in power 60, 70, 80 years. No. Or to be able where they can steal the wealth from the people. This is not what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to enforce what they have been taught. They've been put into a special position in order to enforce Subhanahu wa Ta'ala's law and to protect Subhanahu wa Ta'ala's law and to protect the people who worship Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. We're not having that today, nowhere around the world. There's a few places in the Muslim world that actually work with the Sharia, but most places do not. And we know what's happening in the Western world, and we know what's happening in Asia. It's disgusting. You turn on the TV, I'm tired of it. I turn on TV, I see strife all over the world. People demonstrating the corruption, the corruption in the land everywhere in the world now is off the charts. We have leaders stealing millions and millions from the people, and we have people who are starving. You have assets, especially here in Africa, the minerals, oil, and so forth and so on. And yet you see people still living in the 1700s, and starving. It's really bad, and the times are really, really bad. Our Prophet ﷺ said it will be cleaned up, and I believe him. If he says it's going to be cleaned up, I believe what he has to say. So, my dear brothers and sisters, I will close with that, and we'll pick up again on that. And I'm thinking of also starting to do a series on Muslim heroes in Islam, because I think a lot of the brothers and sisters, especially in America, don't know about many of the Sahaba, and they don't know about the Prophet ﷺ. And I'll get to him, inshallah ta'ala, as well. But I want to start to introduce some of the Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, because they were all special men, handpicked, and each one of them had his specialty. And so I think I will begin to talk about them, inshallah ta'ala, as well, because we should know who these people are and whatnot, because you are remiss. And I saw a funny thing on YouTube today. There was a Tubab man. He walked up to this one African American, and he said he was Muslim. This is in America. When he asked the Muslim about one Sahaba, he didn't even know who he was. So when he named another guy, he said, "Do you know this guy? He's a companion of the Prophet Sallallahu." He said, "Yeah, he is." He wasn't. The Tubab was playing with him. This Tubab American was playing with him. He kept giving him names. He didn't know. You see that, my brothers and sisters? He didn't know. And the Tubab kept playing with him. He said, "Isn't it one of the Sahaba? Is his name this?" He said, "Yeah." He kept saying yeah to everything he said, when in fact it wasn't. He was trying to prove a point by trying to say that the Muslims don't even know the companions of the Prophet, and they don't even know the Prophet himself, alayhi salatu wasalam. And he proved that point today with this one young brother who said he was Muslim. And he couldn't even tell what some of the names of the Prophet, when he was asked, he didn't know any of them. He didn't know any of the companions of the Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. So I'm going to see about correcting some of that, even though I don't have a big audience. But you never know, inshallah, maybe this may come out and more people see that. So my brother and sister, I'll leave you with that today. And thank you, my dear sister Amina. Thank you, my brother King, for showing up today. And my brothers and sisters, be careful out there. Be careful, because there's a lot of evil and wickedness, and we're getting hurt at a big range. Please be careful in the Western states in particular. Please be careful. Don't do anything foolish that'll get you in trouble and get you shot, because you know how it is there. Just be very careful and mindful of that. And you Muslims as well, be very careful, especially if you go to the masjid early in the morning or you go to the masjid late at night. Be very careful, my brothers and sisters. It's the wickedness is off the charts now, especially in the Western states. Please be very careful. And let me see what my brother says. America, Brother King here says, America also applies to the copper tone nations. Yes, my dear brother, you're right. You're right. Yes, you're right, my dear brother. Okay, with that, I'll leave you with the beautiful words of Jinnah, Salamu Alaikum, Rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.